Hey, it's Chris here on my channel, and today I'm gonna be doing a follow-up video, an update on my Sony SL8450 from 1986. When we did in my last video, I did my demonstration and the restoration of this unit, of this nice-looking Beta VCR, this Super Beta Hi-Fi. I just made this thing, and it got it working. So what I did. And here's a little bit of an update. I did straighten out the sensor because what happened is I just moved the sensor a little bit further. When I first got it, the sensor thing just fell off a little bit. Yeah, but it's blocking that light that says Beta Hi-Fi. So I did straighten the sensor, and it still lights up. You can see it says Beta Hi-Fi on it. But the other problem is I don't have a remote control. It originally came with a remote, but I don't have it. And also, like I said, the latch is missing. I know I have to look up for the same model. I've been looking up the same model on eBay, which is the non-working one. Yeah, it costs like $100, but it needs to have a donor or something. So it should be perfectly fine for now. For now, it will be fine. And this is actually very nice. You can see it lights up, says Beta Hi-Fi. And once you turn it off, yeah, it shuts off completely. It's a Beta Hi-Fi, shuts off. And when you turn it on, it's back on. And there's also auto stereo, which is S stereo or SAP in there. It didn't light up, so I don't have to worry about it. But, yep, I just fixed the little timer, and then you got your thing. And there you go. I did some stuff here, but now everything is working perfectly. So by all means, I did a test video I just recorded of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I haven't done doing direct video feed from this machine, so we'll have to do it later on. So let me tell you something about this. Let's take a look, deep dive into the Betamax and VHS, which will talk about it somehow right now. So let's take a look. This is a Betamax format. This was introduced by Sony in 1975. And yeah, for those of you who have not been checking this video on my channel, if you haven't seen that one, for those of you who have not joined in this channel, I'll give you a little bit of a story time for you. Sony introduced the Betamax in 1975. I know there's a lot of stuff out there if you haven't checked out this video. CCG88 did a video on the history of the Betamax and the history of the VHS format. Two of the biggest format wars in there of all time. If you have followed this one, you have to check this out. The link is in the description below. Or yeah, you can watch it for yourself. It gives you a little in-depth look of the Beta format and, of course, the VHS format. So this Betamax started in '75, and those of you who hasn't participated in this video lately, because there are many videos on YouTube. They did a promotional video of the 1975 Betamax, the very first Betamax promo. If you haven't seen the video, you have to check this out. It's the very first one was the LV1901. It came with a TV bundled into one. It was a bundle back in 1975. It was very expensive. Back in the day, it was the LV1901 with the SL6200. But it actually has no timer on it, so the timer was built into the system. So here's what it looks like. This is the LV1901. It's very rare, very collectible, very hard to find. It goes for tons and tons of money online. If you find those in working condition, yeah, you can do this. Like, yeah, if you find those, like, it needs some work, or if you find them in perfect condition, or it needs restoration, that's fine. It also has a SL6200 that looks like this. And here it is. This was actually the very first one, the world's first VCR that came with the LV1901, and this was also from 1975. It's got all the piano keys and the tracking knobs and the whole thing. It's actually, you can record up to 1 hour on a Beta 1 speed. Yep, this was a Beta 1 only VCR, was the first of probably two VCRs that originally came out. It would record only an hour. Well, you can record a TV show or possibly a TV special, but not movies or not sporting events. You had to take 2-3 parts separately to watch it. And watching a continuation of a movie, what happens when you run out of tape, which the first half of the movie was over, you had to switch it to another tape and record the actual second half of the second hour of the movie. Well, that's not the case though, because that didn't work out. But you can record strictly for both TV shows or TV specials only, but not movies or everything. That would have wasting too much space on there. That sucked back in the 70s when this was first introduced in 1975. But a year later, in 1976, they came out with this. This is the SL7200, first introduced in 1976. Also, another 1 hour Betamax Beta 1 VCR. It also has the timer, but it does not include the timer. You can get a timer. You can get a special timer that comes separately. You have to set the timer when you plug that in. It comes with a little timer, analog timer clock that was included there, which was sold separately. You have to set your timer, recording a movie while you're away, recording a TV show while you're away, or while you're out at a ballpark or a movie, or going to a movie theater or a play. You have to set your timer before leaving when you go out to a store or whatever it is, or going out on a vacation or on the road without missing a single program. You have to record like that for 1 hour, and that was that. That's also the only Beta 1 machine. So that was, very disappointing, but when this happened, so that's still the only thing you can do. What's about the next VCR? And of course, there's the SL8600 from probably about 78. This was also the first VCR to have an X2 format, or Beta 2, where you can record like 2 hours of a film and in X2 B2 speed. And this was there's actually never had a Beta 3, but yes, but of course, unfortunately, the SL6200 and SL7200 doesn't play Beta 2. Yeah, it would play too fast. It's only strictly records on Beta 1, but it will not play Beta 2 or Beta 3 because it's just speds up a lot. Since it's not even compatible, wasn't even compatible yet, it would compatible of play Beta 1. So I think the next one is another VCR. There's the 8200 from 1978. That's also a Beta 2 only VCR. And then this was from 1978. I was born then, the same year I was born. And then another one, I think it came out in 79, that also has this feature. This is the SL5800 from about 1979 or 1980. It's also the first VCR to have a 2-speed feature, Beta 2 and Beta 3. It will record a Beta 2 and Beta 3 and on every speed. You can record a movie, a TV show, many episodes of a TV series, or probably TV specials, or probably a TV special that runs about 2 hours long or 3 hours long, depending on the length. And or you can record a sporting event as well. So there you go. That was kind of a much better improvement over the other previous model VCRs that Sony made at the time. And that's all about that, I could say. And it's also the first feature to have a beta scan. It's sort of a screen search. You have to check with you. Yeah, you can speed up your picture if the picture gets sped up or whatever it is to see if the action. It's got a rapid feature. It's a rapid picture search, and the whole thing is called beta scan. It's where you can fast forward or rewind, creating amazing effects on there. But this was actually a very interesting feature of this VCR. So there you go. That was one of the first of the many VCR models made by Sony. And back to the Betamax we go. This was the very first. This is the Betamax format. It's very small but compact, but it looks kind of small. But the cartridge itself looks pretty neat. But this is a nice. This is a recording I made. This is My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. I just recorded on there, but using a SL450. Super beta. It was on super beta. It's on beta mode, beta hi-fi mode. It's got the sound quality looks perfect, outstanding, but it's also when you hit the normal switch, it would play fine. The sound quality was subpar, but probably not as good. But the picture quality looks sharper and whatever you in detail. So that's a pretty interesting thing. Yep, it's got this is the beta format. It has a window where it's a supply reel was actually how much tape we have left. If you run the tape in, if you play, you can see how much time the tape left on this machine. This was a nice looking thing. You have the thing to see how much tape we have left. So that's a pretty interesting format. But this is very small. But look, this is a very small Betamax tape. Wow. You can't open, and you can see the back. It has the tabs. Yeah, originally had the tabs in, so I just removed the tab. It's to prevent from recording over it. This could be used as an archive footage to make small space. Yep, it takes a little bit of space in here because for a collection we have for that, then this is a very nice. So after the Betamax came out in 1975, in 1976, JVC introduced an answer to what we know as the beta format, but this was JVC's answer to the Sony Betamax. So JVC made the idea of making a home video format of their own, but this was like the crown jewel of the home video format. You may ask, but this was the answer to the Betamax format. And that JVC made this. This is a VHS format. Look at this. It's bigger than the beta tape. You can see here. You can compare to this one. This looks smaller than a Betamax. Look, you can see it's a bit smaller, but the VHS was larger than the Betamax. It's got two windows, and it's got the lid. Where you can open up, and it's got film strip in here. You can see it has the wider film strip than the VHS, than the Betamax do. It's got the reels in here. Yep, there's reels on the one side and the reels on this side. But yes, it's got spokes on there. But it's where the spindle goes in here. Then this one goes in there. This is like 6 spokes. See how many spokes we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spokes. Yet this has 9 spokes on there, but 9 hubs. And this one has the hubs right there. This is kind of smaller, but Betamax was smaller than VHS is probably larger. I think this is a little bit of an in-depth look at the history though, but this is the larger format, but by the late 70s, this started a little bit of a competition war between Betamax and VHS. You know, this is kind of like the way this is starting to have a big competition. You know, other brands like this. We're going to go into detail here. So let's take a look at the VCRs, the VHS VCRs in its first wave of VHS VCRs. This was the JVC's very first VCR. It's named Victor, which is in Japan. It was sold in Japan in 1976, and this is the HR3300. And it was made by what was originally called Victor from Japan, but later changed to JVC. But in the America, it was actually JVC. It was actually Victor. JVC. It was part of JVC. It's got all the buttons included here, and this was actually the answer to Sony's Betamax VCR. It's got your channel changer, there's tuner, has the auxiliary tuner for both UHF and VHF, your clock settings, there's your Your VTR was a videotape recorder and TV switch, your power and your record selection for both auxiliary and TV. And it's one of those top loaders. Yep, some of the early models have top loaders, but in the 80s they went to the front loaders, as you can tell. This was absolutely one of the very first VCRs ever purchased, but in Japan. But a year later, RCA took that and made this. This was the RCA VCT201, introduced in 1977. This was the very first VHS VCR in America. It was manufactured by RCA, and then later manufactured by Panasonic. Also introduced that later that year in 1977. Also introduced by Panasonic. But this one has all the features. You can tell it's got all the piano keys that look like a Betamax tape. Unlike the Betamax, it's got the VCR, TV, select, memory, counter, clock, and also there's also a dim, I'm not sure it is, if it's a dim, the power switch. There's also some piano key buttons for play, rewind, pause, record, or whatever it is, eject buttons. This was actually a top-loading VCR, and this was very early in the game. In the late 70s, it's actually the very first VCR to have a top loader. I think they stopped doing top loaders by around the early 80s when they switched it over to the front loaders. But when you load the tape, and we'll get to that later on. But this is also got the auxiliary tuners for AFT switch changer. You can see it has that channel change, the analog tuner, so you can switch your channels to, I think, like the TV set, like those little instrument panels that you see on the TV. This was RCA's breakthrough, and this was the first in the series of what they called as the selective vision line. You can record 2 hours in SP and 4 hours on LP, but there was no EP mode or SLP, which records for 6 hours. And there was also, in addition to that, the first blank VHS they ever got was this. It came with the first blank VHS tape ever made. It's called the VK250, which later became T120. And that was introduced that year in 1977. This was actually remained until sometime in the early 80s or so. This was the late 70s. This was a very, very early blank VHS tape. You can record stuff off television, or you can record TV shows. Yeah, you can record many episodes from the series. Plus, you can also record TV specials, like maybe a 2-hour special or a special event, sports, or possibly like that, or a movie. You can record a movie on there. So it contains high quality formulation intended for use with multi-speed VHS format. Video cassette recorders like RCA Selective Vision models has been manufactured to RCA's critical specifications for excellent performance, with RCA VCRs use of tape not meeting these specifications could considerably reduce the performance of your multi-speed VCR. This was a very interesting concept, but there was no T120 back then. You can record like 2 hours on them on one cassette. That will only have 2 hours of them, 4 hours on LP. And like I said, there's no EP, but that wasn't enough until 1980. They came out with this. This is another model we got. It's a VDT 600 made by RCA in 1980. You can record SP, LP, and SLP. It's one of the first VCR to have a 3-speed function instead of a 2-speed function. They just added the 3-speed, the SLP or EP. You can record up to 6 hours of playing time, of recording time. You can record like 6 hours of TV shows, movies, where you can record like 2 movies at once. You can record any way you wish. You have to record 6 hours per tape. You have like so many episodes from the series. Yep, you can fit onto the one tape. It's known as time shifting. You have to time shift your recording time for like 6 hours. You can have to record up to there. And this is actually, you can record up to 6 hours on one tape. And this is another line of selective vision models. It uses the same exact design used in the 1977 model made by RCA. But Panasonic, by the way, introduced the other way around with the very first VCR. I'm not going to get into this one, so I'll show you the Panasonics. This was actually the Panasonic's PV1100 OmniVision VCR. This was the very first one was under the Panasonic's OmniVision brand. It was introduced in 1978. You can record up to 4 hours instead of 6 hours, but this was introduced in 1978. It uses the two-speed model. It uses the two-speed functions where you record 2 hours in SP, 4 hours in LP. There's no, like I said, there's no EP for 6 hours yet, but until 1980 when they came with this. It's got like this. It's got the same design, same piano key buttons like the one seen on an RCA. It's got the clock settings and the little tuner dial on there, and the counter as well. So there you go. And this next one goes like this. Here it is, the PV1210 VCR from probably around 1980 or so. This was when they introduced the 6-hour format, EP mode. This is actually, it has a 3-speed feature where you can record 6 hours of recording time. Like I said, it's got the bottom, it's moved there, it has SP, LP, and EP. Same features that you see on other VCRs. This is pretty bulky. You can see the VCRs are very, very bulky at times. Yep, it went in very well. So that was like, this is the one I don't even have in there because Panasonic did ride it high with the VHS VCRs. But there's one thing I remember. My parents had this VCR, which was this one I want to show you right now. Here it is. This was the Fisher FVH 515 VCR from probably around 81 to 83. Yep, but this was this was the same exact model that my parents used to have this back in the early 80s. And we had fun with it, and of course we used to play around with it, and it was a pretty good design. It's a very good model. Yep, it's got all the stuff in here because it was a top loader VCR. This was the VCR we used to have when I was like a little kid back in the day. Back when I was small, my parents used to have this VCR back then. It's like, well, it plays perfectly. I remember renting a movie from a video store at the time. We used to watch those movies, and of course, there you go. That was actually the VCR we used to have. I miss my days when what happened in the mid to late 80s, the VCR was busted up pretty badly. Yeah, it wasn't working anymore, so they replaced with another VCR that he got back in the day. So that was the Toshiba model from the late 80s. They went from Betamax to the VHS format, which by the mid 80s, Toshiba gave up the Betamax VCRs and went with the VHS VCRs. And it did pretty well, but it looks pretty nice. But it's a pretty good VCR for its time, and I miss this VCR very much. So it was a top loader, but this was a top loader. I hope might be in the future. I might get this one day. This will be my own VCR that I had when I was a kid, and this was way back in the 80s. And it was a very nifty model, and I know VCRs were more common, but yeah, it had some issues sometime by the late 80s. Yeah, I have not fixed the VCRs yet, so I just wanted to do one day when I go on eBay. I have to look and see if I can get a VCR, a nice VCR that I have from the same model, depending on what model I had. But when we used to have it as a kid, since it had some issues, it won't play, and yes, the VCR won't play, and all the stuff. It's probably acted up. So I don't know. I haven't fixed it in a very long time, but I haven't fixed VCRs at the moment. But I don't know when this is. Yeah, because I don't have the tools or anything. When I was young, I don't have tools to repair and how to restore this thing so back into working order. So I just wanted to let you all know that. And yes, we threw them in the trash. Kind of like they threw that in a recycling bin or whatever it is. That was like, I missed this VCR back in the day. Yeah, it was a very shame memory. So I hope, let's see if it comes up one day. I might think about getting it. So this was actually a pretty good condition, nice looking VCR that I missed very much. So I'll have to deal with that one day. I'll have to look into see if I can try to fiddle around with it and see if I can get a model like we used to have when I was a kid. So enough said. There you go. I'm not going through all the VHS VCRs these days. So let's get back to VHS. Now back to the VHS. As you know, VHS has more lengthy than the Betamax. You can tell this records up to about 4.5 hours on an L750. There are many types of tape lengths. There's actually a handful of tape lengths. It will go from one. There's a tape length online that gives you a little bit of chart history. So if you want to look it up and see how many lengths are in here, there are so many lengths on the Betamax tapes. Back in the beginning, there was K60s and K30s, but Sony decided, well, that's enough of that. So they went by the late 70s, they went into the L750. Well, into the L series, and it switched from the beginning in 1975 all the way to about 77 or so. Sony gave up the K format, the K series, and went to the L series, which I think if you could look at the speeds, it goes up to a length of tapes. It would go from the shorter to the larger ones. It would be the one that goes up there. My favorite is the L750s. There's even an L500 and L250 and so on and so forth. That's L750. It records up to 4.5 hours of tape. But while the VHS would run up to 6 hours in EP. L750 records up to 4.5 hours on Beta 3, while the VHS would record up to 6 hours of recording time, depending on what you're recording. This was actually a pretty big deal, since the format already was the big dominant format. But Betamax, by the way, but during its first years, by the late 70s, they started manufacturing pre-recorded beta tapes. So yeah, you can get those on eBay. You have to check it out. These are actual movies. And also, I just think this was a pretty big thing because, a lot of home video distributors are start manufacturing Betamax, pre-recorded Betamax tapes, where you can get them at a local store, video stores, or rental place. Back in the day, you had to pick a movie. You had to buy a movie, which is very expensive back in the day. You can go on eBay to get those cheap as possible. But some other things about that, VHS, you can get them as higher price than the Betamax. You can tell if it's Betamax copies of this movie would cost lower than a VHS. But this one is a very thing, because what happened is people don't want to buy Betamax VCRs, but people were going into the VHS VCR. You could go out and buy VHS tapes. A lot of people go out and buy them, but people can't stand a Betamax like this. It's like it's like a Royal Rumble, Betamax versus VHS. We've been mentioning this on many videos. A lot of people discussed this on the history of Betamax and VHS war. This is when they started a war between the VHS and the Betamax. But Betamax is kind of small, while VHS was bigger. Well, it's larger, bigger than what you expect. The Beta was the smaller, or VHS is bigger. Which one? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, that's all I can say about that. Well, hold on a second. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is just a beta format. When back in the day, when a lot of people have VHS VCRs in there, but why can you expect this? It's a VHS. A lot of people love VHS. You can buy VHS tapes. Betamax is actually, it sold pretty well, but it went down the drain after that. After 25% of people bought these over these, but a lot of people bought this over the Betamax. But yeah, Betamax was by the early to mid '80s, Betamax sales would drop rapidly, significantly, following because VHS was on the rise, and people are gonna still, video rental stores could rent movies on VHS. You have to get those on there, but I don't know if Betamax would, video rental place have Betamax tapes, but you can do. This is all you can get. You can rent a movie. Yeah, I remember going to a video store back in the day when you go out and rent a movie that is on VHS. You can see it. There's nothing but VHS. But where's the Betamax? Where's the Betamax? Well, there's no Betamax in here, but in the rental stores. But some do. But some do, some don't. And what you're gonna do is just, why not have if you have a Betamax VCR like Sony, or kind of strictly how to manufacture this one, because there was in the 80s there was Super Betamax or Beta Hi-Fi. You can record this on there, but come on, VHS. Well, you cannot. Yeah, but this beats out the competition. But by the late 80s, by the end of the 80s into the early 90s, when Betamax, pre-recorded Betamax was about to lose steam. But that's because what happened is VHS was the king of the castle. Yep, as you can probably know, Betamax knocked it down and kind of stopped doing this probably around that time. They still make Betamax tapes right up until the 2016 or 2015. They discontinued it right into 2012. If you'll learn about that, if you want to watch this video and find out. But by the late 80s, VHS was the big winner. Yep, it was the king of the castle. And you know what? Yeah, way to go. Betamax is the loser, and Betamax was king. Yep, it was the king of the castle. The VHS was the king of the castle. It was the biggest winner of all time. You can tell people are going to buy VHSs. Well, still buying VHS VCRs. Back in the day, you can tell the VHS is the biggest winner of all. Sorry, Betamax, you need to go. Yeah, that's what happens when you think VHS was the biggest winner of all, bar none. Well, anyways, they continued to produce them into the 90s. They continued it all the way to the 90s, if you know, right into the new millennium. They still made VHS tapes. They made blanks. They made everything. They just dominated the market. But by 1997, another format that takes place. Yep, that's what I was talking about. DVD. This came out in 1997. You could tell it's beating VHS to death. Look at that. It just beats DVD to death. You have to say. It's got the disc. It's got much of the recording time, it's digital, but it's not analog, but it's the digital format. When it's what they known as digital versatile disc, or VHS was video home system. Well, it beats out of the way. Yeah, sorry VHS, you need to go. Well, the big winner of them all is the DVD. So they continued it it continued on to this day when people bought DVDs better than VHS. That's what happens when you thought VHS was there, but DVD is actually the big winner over the VHS. Well, chances are you'll be the judge. So I always enjoyed these formats, but glad this is how big these comparisons to these video formats. Like this would be more like a VHS or a DVD, or VHS, Betamax, DVD. I like home video formats, but that was a little bit of a story for another time. But if you want to see it again, just watch it on his channel. CCG88 did a video on these two different rivals. Betamax and VHS technology returns once more. So this is I enjoyed video formats. If you want to see that, and these are the two they put out a series on that on YouTube. So if you want to see that, that's good. So I enjoyed this very much. So what's gonna happen to the Betamax?
You tell her, Apple Bloom.
Well, you can also get it on eBay. You can buy a VCR, or you can buy a beta tape or a DVD. Yeah, there's a tons of stuff on eBay. You can go out and get those. You can buy those cheap, or whatever you want to call it. Yep. There you go. Kind of like you can still get them on eBay. Don't worry. Yeah, as Apple Bloom would say, yeah, you can buy those VHS, or Disney VHS tapes are worth a lot of money. That goes up for $500 to $1,000. Like, for example, a VHS of Cinderella, like the one seen here, it goes up for a lot of money on eBay. But the Betamax tapes, you sometimes Disney Betamax tapes, it will go a little bit further, like 50 to depending on how much the cost will be, depending on $50, $100 to even $500 when you buy a Betamax tape, or which was a Neon Mickey tape. So if you want to buy those, that's it's your option. You can, it goes up for a ridiculous amount of money on eBay. You can tell Disney Betamax tapes, sometimes it goes up for a lot of money on eBay, but the DVD would cost a little bit cheaper, but you can go and buy these. So there you go. That's the story all about Betamax versus VHS versus DVD. This goes away for the competition battle between that. So anyways, there you go. That was it. I have nothing else to say about it, but that's my story. So let's get to that one. All right. Before I'm going to show you one more time, I'm going to do a little direct audio. This is going to be a direct video to see how it does play perfectly. If you want to, here's a big example. So here's a good thing. Like I said before, in a past video, we've been talking about direct video hookup to this thing. So I decided to do another go here. So here's my direct video hookup which is directly from a video capture like this. That includes the opening to My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, recorded on the Betamax, on the Super Beta Hi-Fi, the Sony SL8450. This is the normal version and the Super Beta version. So if you want to do some improvements, I'll show you the video right now. So here we go.
My little pony, my little pony. My little pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be, until you all shared its magic with me. Big adventure, tons of fun. A beautiful heart, faithful and strong. Sharing kindness, it's an easy feat, and magic makes it all complete. You have mine. Do you know you're all my very best friends? My little pony, my little pony. My little pony. I used to wonder what friendship could be, until you all shared its magic with me. Big adventure, tons of fun. A beautiful heart, faithful and strong. Sharing kindness, it's an easy feat, and magic makes it all complete. You have mine. Do you know you're all my very best friends?
And there you have it. A direct video comparisons of the two openings to My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. One is the normal, and the one is Super Beta. And that's it. I'm glad. Hope you understand, and hope things work out pretty well. So enough rambling. Hope you all enjoyed a look at the history behind the video formats and the whole thing. So I'm glad you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, just give it a like, or leave a comment below and tell us what you think about the home video formats and the format wars and the whole thing. So that's all I got to say about that. And that's it. Had enough to say. So thanks again for watching. And this is Chris, and I will catch you later.